What up, Unstoppables? We have a great episode today, but real quick, we want to invite you to make the most important investment of your life. It's not a secret. There's no like smoke and mirrors. I'm not even trying to like pull a fast one on you. I'm going to be pretty straightforward. The best investment you can make in your life is in yourself. And the best way to invest in yourself is by investing in your network, putting time and energy, surrounding yourself with the best. You are the average of those you surround yourself with. In that Restaurant Unstoppable network, I made it easy. Over the past 12 years and 1,200 plus episodes, I've been researching and talking to people and trying to figure out how do you become successful in the restaurant industry. And I've curated a network of tools, services, technologies, and individuals, experts that I would go to tomorrow if I'm opening a restaurant. And I'm bringing you to that network with live events, whether it be a workshop, a mentoring session, a power hour, or access to me twice a month where I just listen and steer you in the right direction, all happening at Restaurant Unstoppable Network. Head over to restaurantunstoppable.com/live. You also get this amazing access to all the recordings, RU Network podcast, which includes bonus ad-free and early release content. It also gives you access to our Unstoppable bot. It is a custom AI agent that is fed with 1,200 plus transcripts, over 2,400 hours of transcripts plus bonus content, all cross-referenced with our database. This is a powerful AI tool that you also get access to as well. What are you waiting for? Head over to restaurantunstoppable.com/live and we'll see you there. This episode made possible by Restaurant Systems Pro. With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, founder of Barmetrix, CEO and head coach of Finter Group, and owner of the Franklin House, Sean Finter. Welcome back on the show, my man. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
You feeling unstoppable?
I'm feeling unstoppable.
Yeah,
I'm glad you're back, man.
Dude, stoked to have you here, Sean Finter. The first time I had you on the show, 1027. That was 2 years ago.
Okay.
It was an amazing episode. If you folks are listening to this and did not catch that episode 1027, head back, check it out. It's a doozy. You had some amazing advice on mentorship. The number one reason why restaurants fail. You got into that. One quote that you had, epic. If you want to attract epic people onto yourself, you have to do epic shit. There's just so many things that were bangers from that episode, man. And honestly, it had an influence on me. It really did. And, the dream was to get in a camper and to drive around the country and to do epic shit.
Right.
And I think hearing that quote really kind of reminded me, if you want to do cool stuff, you have to make it happen.
Yeah. And you are. I just parked beside the camper.
Yeah, man, it's out there. 2 months. They were my last interview from a 2-month road trip. We got content scheduled into October. I've never been that far. 6 months of content scheduled into the future, which is going to be huge for me.
Yeah.
To be able to pivot and to work on the business. So I'm stoked for that. When we last spoke to you, I asked, was there anything that we should be talking about that, the mission statement is to inspire, empower, and transform the world. And you said we need to be better about H to H, human to human. That was a big thing that you talked about. You said owners need to be better at leading leadership, and leadership needs to be better at leading staff.
Right.
Yep. So kind of pick up there where we left off, but anything new with you and your business that I should be aware of before we get started?
The business right now is, went from a really big team a little while back to just Allie and I and some support, and it's a totally different world, man. My phone, I don't even know if it's on or off. Sometimes it used to ring 5-10 times an hour, and now and we're free to travel the world, writing a couple of books,
nice,
speaking, and coaching, which is my favorite thing to do. So
yeah,
I've kind of created my dream job.
So what is the core focus right now for you in the books and the coaching? What is the your area of expertise?
So the books, and books plural, because I thought I was writing a book. I submitted it working with the publisher, and they're like, oh, this is 2 books. This is so good. And the reason I agreed to it was that one is going to really focus on our industry, on hospitality, and the other is more business general. And so I thought, well, twice as much work, 2 books. And with my dyslexia, it turns out it's like 5 times the work, and just trying to pull them apart, make sure they still work, the stories connect, and the whole deal. But I'm getting there. I'm getting close.
Yeah, man. And I know that was a big part of what you're working on when I was last year. And please know when those books come out, you're coming back on the show. We're going to go into it. You know, I like to start every episode by having my guests share a success quote or mantra. I have the one that you shared with us the last time.
Which one was it?
I'm tempted to tell you afterwards. I want to see if you're a man of consistency. So what do you have for a success quote or mantra today?
Oh my God. There's so many. Every day I read, 10 or 15 quotes. I've been reading the philosophers lately. There's just so much great stuff there. Wow. You put me on the spot. I'm trying to think of the right one for the moment.
Well, it was another, I can share it if you want me to. Want me to
Okay.
share? Okay. So I think, and this is me paraphrasing, before you have a breakthrough, am I clicking any memories for you right now?
Yeah.
What is it?
You have to have a break with.
What do you mean by that, man?
So, when going back 8 years, went through a really tough time in my life. And, for a guy who likes to be in control and pulls everything into himself, everything was being pulled away from me, going through a divorce. Mental health was an issue for me at that time really badly. Business partnership breaking down. And I called a friend of mine in Australia who I really look up to. And he was listening to me. And most of the people I only told a few other people, but they're like, oh, man, that's terrible. I'm so sorry and everything else. And he was quiet, and I could hear him smiling. And he goes, okay, this is how it goes, man. You're coming up on this big breakthrough. And he said, you just have so much weight dragging behind you that he said it's not natural to hold on to all of this and think you can pick up more things on the way through. So he kind of saluted where I was at. I accepted that I was having a break with a few different things. And he was absolutely right. I had a big breakthrough.
Yeah, and it kind of supports a lot of what you shared in the last conversation too. Is if you when you were reflecting in our first conversation, you're saying you'd look back and I asked you one thing you would have done different when you owned restaurants. You would have focused on one concept and put energy into one concept. And I think in the world where there's just so much coming at us and there's
Right.
so many opportunities, like shiny ball or shiny object syndrome or whatever it is, the people who do the best are always super focused, and they put all their energy. They know what they're good at, or they take one thing, they become the best at it, and they do it better than anybody else, and they just scale it, right? And I think that has been such a lesson here on this podcast. And it sounds like one thing that's happened in the last 2 years, or what you've continued to do in the last 2 years since I spoke with you, is just continue to kind of whittle down and focus on what it is that I want to do. Where do I want to put my focus? So where is that focus today?
Well, the coaching that I do is kind of the center of my business universe, and I've been doing it now for almost 20 years, about 18 years, and this is after having 8 of my own bars and restaurants, and really what I feel making all of the mistakes, and sometimes 3 or 4 times, and the big takeaway for me and the reflection of my business chapter back then and what I'm helping people with now is. The healthier the individuals, the healthier the collective, the healthier the business, right? There's just so much churn and waste and anxiety and in all of the drama that comes with a lot of people in this industry. And, the lack of focus on health and, being successful humans is first and foremost is going to help us be a successful bar back, bartender, bar manager, bar owner, whatever you are. And I think we get away from that. We think if we just come to work and work hard, whatever that means, we're going to be successful. And I've tried to help my clients say, let's look at these individuals. A lot of people come in, it's their first job. Other people, it's 10 years into a dead-end job, dead-end industry, and saying, how do we help them step into their potential? I don't want to sound like Tony Robbins, but somebody did it for me and believed in me more than I believed in myself, and then pushed me to go after it.
Is this your original the boss, the Greek boss?
That's
from
right.
The trucker operation, or the truck stop?
Yeah, he was the first, but I've had 3 bosses, including him, that did that for me. Just different ages and stages in my life, and somebody looked at me and gave me more responsibility than I deserved, and the small me, went, oh, how am I going to get paid for that? How is this going to work? And I just kept hearing this voice in my head to say, take it on and do it and see what happens. And I just kept going and going. And, by the time I became a business owner at 26 years old.
I mean, what's coming through my mind right now is just self-awareness, right? And I think self-awareness starts with other people recognizing your strengths and potential.
Right.
And I don't think we know what we don't have self-awareness when we're 12, 13, 14, even until we get to our like mid to late 20s. That's when it starts to happen for most people, that frontal lobe. Younger for women, typically their mid 20s, like 24, 25. But for men, sometimes late 28, 30 years old. Sometimes you don't really get that self-awareness. But I think we become self-aware by paying attention to the patterns and the reinforcement we get from the world around us when somebody says you're good at that.
Yeah.
And you start to see these patterns. Oh, I'm good at this. And we all need to be seen. Right. That was a big part. The number one reason why restaurants failed, you talked about this in our first episode, is that we're not good at seeing people and making people feel seen and welcome, the hospitality, right?
Yeah.
We are creatures that thrive on being seen and being valued.
Yeah.
And when we do that for our staff, we see and value them and reinforce what they're good at, we help them become self-aware. And I think it's this never-ending journey of self-awareness. And as you continue to become more and more self-aware, you start to shred all the things that just don't make you happy.
Right.
And that's continuing. It sounds like that's continuing to happen for you to this day.
Well, being a coach has really allowed me this unique vantage point to see, I've figured out in many areas of business why things work, but I guess I didn't have it all figured out on why things didn't work. Like what is it that holds us back from doing that? You mentioned recognizing patterns, right? Like I don't know anyone in the industry that's 50% better than everybody else, right? There's 5%, 10%, 15%, but there's a pattern to how they got there. And even though it might take me 2 years in this stage, it only took them 1, I have to do the things they did to get the result that they got. And you look at fear is a main restrictor. All right, my 14-year-old daughter's the last one to enter the workforce. She had to be 14 in Maryland to work here. And she's working at a restaurant right up the road with her sister who also works there. And she was going in for the interview. And although she kind of knows the owner, like just through me, she's scared. She's a 14-year-old girl going in this big, busy restaurant. And this ties to your question about a quote that I've been thinking about lately. I said to her that 2 things about fear. One is the acronym FEAR is false evidence appearing real, right? So I asked her what she was afraid of, and this might happen, that might happen. I said it's unlikely that it will, right? And if it does, we can get through it. And secondly, I love the quote that fear is a mile wide and an inch deep. And I said, you just got to step into it. And I said, the best way to do that is to go on the offense. And I said, what happens at an interview? And she said, well, he's going to ask me a bunch of questions. And I said, are you afraid of that? And she said, yeah, I am a little bit. And I said, well, what if you started by asking him a question? And she said, well, what would I ask? I said, well, let's think about it, So she came up with 2 really great questions, and she led the interview with that, and said, suddenly when I saw her afterwards, she said, I wasn't afraid anymore. I was in a discussion, in a dialogue, rather than being interrogated.
Yeah, I think we put off doing the thing. Right. We put more energy into worrying about the thing than actually doing the thing itself.
Right.
And when we just take that first step, when we ask the first question, that the momentum just starts, and like whatever it was that was holding us back, whatever fear we had, just starts to dissolve with that first step.
Yeah.
You also, we're talking about the human connectivity. I wanted to make sure we brought that into it, and you said, we're becoming, I think, and I'm paraphrasing, we're learning more and more about what it means to be human. Right. As we go into the future, we're learning more about, psychological evolution, or just like the study of us, right? Mm-hmm. Like as the world of science progresses and technology progresses, we're just learning more about how we tick and what we need to be happy. Mm. How do you think that manifests in like the workplace today? Like as we learn more about us, like how is that manifesting in the workplace?
The word happy is, I think, a good place to start. And one of my big failings as an early leader in the industry was assuming I knew what made people happy, right? I assumed that what makes me happy also makes you happy. More money, more of this, more of that. And when I slowed down enough to start asking people, I was actually shocked at, how diverse our needs and interests are. And it's not just who we are as humans, it's where we're at in our life and what's around us. And I think as a business leader, starting there, we had, and I'll share with you these, we taught people to dream out loud like I was taught, and create a vision board for themselves. And happiness, doesn't exist in a silo. So, help getting into their head, getting into their heart, understanding what makes them happy at work. It's a big first step as a leader. But what also makes them happy at home, right? Is it any of my business? Only if they want to share it, right? And, where are they at? What are they driving towards? What would be wonderful for the future? Looking at what would take to be happier as a family and their family. Is that more time at home? Is this, 3-5 things that are different than today? And then the final quadrant, we worked with the team. The number one way to build self-confidence is to volunteer, right? To get involved in your community. So saying, what is it that you could do? And it could be an hour a month. It could be half a day, twice a year, whatever it might be. So, that idea of dreaming out loud, and as a dyslexic, I have all mine in pictures up on the wall. And we had a whole wall in my last business, an office just up the road here, that we could stand in this hallway and look at someone's dreams, right, and where they were at, and then say, man, I think I could help you with that. And or I know someone in Rome. And, you start to connect all these dots. That, to me, how does that show up on a balance sheet? I'm not 100% sure, but I know it does.
Yeah, you can't track it. You just have to know that it's like this energy gets put out. And it's just like, there's a book out there I love, and it's not a very popular book. It's called The Go-Giver. Have you ever heard of it?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, I love that book.
Yeah.
And it's this idea of like, don't be a go-getter. Don't try to go out and get things. Go out and try to give people things. Be a person of value. Be valuable to other people with whatever way you can think of it to add value to someone else's life, and then the opportunities knock down your door. There's something going on there. I think it's probably synonymous with the power of attraction.
Yeah,
right? It's that same idea of like just being positive attracts positive things.
Right. It's funny you mentioned that in my last company before I sold it, somebody reached out to me, and they were only 2 hours away, but 2 hours from Washington D.C. And they said, hey, we're really struggling here, and my partner's having issues with his mental health and this and that, and we just don't have a lot of budget. And so I said, you know what, I'll come down. They wanted me to come down and do like a couple hours with the team and talk with them. And so some folks on my old team were like, how does this make sense? Like, you're gonna burn a whole day here, going down there. And I said, I just feel it's the right thing to do. And I heard in his voice, I've had that tone in my voice before. And I wish someone would have just helped. And long story short, I went down and did the thing. There was a rep in there, a senior guy from beverage company. 3, 4, 5 months later, we signed a significant contract off the back. And what he heard me talking about, passed it on to his team and so on and so forth. And, it just, to me, it just makes sense to put yourself out there where you can help, where you can be helpful out in the universe. And certainly not every time something comes back, but I wasn't doing it to get something back. It's just the way the world works sometimes.
Yeah. So you're working on 2 books right now.
Yeah.
One book is going to be focused on the business side of things, and the other one is just more of a general business and general hospitality.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 books.
Yeah. So the reason that the editors wanted to split it in 2 is that I've been thinking about and studying and trying to figure out how to systematize hospitality. And hospitality, to me, is a feeling, right? It's a way we feel. I believe it's a way that the guest feels about themselves while they're in our company. So how do you systematize that? How do you articulate what your brand is? How do you hire people that would get energy from delivering that brand? How do you get leadership involved? And so it turned out to be a pretty weighty piece, but I've had fun with it. I've broken it up into 10 chapters, stories behind each and everything else. So that's kind of the standalone for the industry. Then the second book in parallel with that is on a program and a concept that I first wrote about 25, 26 years ago called Napconomics, and just putting the entire team on one page. And, what are we fighting for? And what are the values that make us great? And what's our strategy on hospitality? And, when we blow it with a guest or with each other, when we let each other down, how do we recover the relationship? Right? When saying sorry just isn't enough, what are the 2 or 3 or 5 steps that you would take to do that? The reason that piece is so important to me is I think that's central to my success as a young bar and restaurant owner, truly being able to not only put everyone on the same page, but I knew it was working when people that had been with me 6 months and 12 months were teaching it to the new people coming in, and better than that, holding everyone accountable to it.
Right. I mean, back to more human to human is like how we left off in the last conversation. I think at the core of business and like the company you work for. Right in the word company. It's the people, like the company you have, the people you're with. It's all about relationships, and it's all about how you make people feel. Danny Myers talks about enlightened hospitality, where it's like that idea of generosity and giving, but as to the people who are closest to you, your staff. Right.
Yeah.
You said in the last conversation that the number one reason why restaurants fail is because of how they make people feel.
Right.
Right. So it sounds like your focus in this book is on, like, again, systemizing hospitality is what you said, but like, can you give us, like, I know the book isn't out yet, and I don't want to get you in trouble making false promises, or maybe things might change, but like, what is that the core? Is that the first book, Systemizing Hospitality?
Yeah. And that one doesn't have a name yet, but that's the book that'll come out second. The Napconomics book will come out first, because we're almost there with that.
And is that more in core? It sounds like that is more about like how to build the culture. If what are we fighting for? Or, what makes us great?
Right.
This episode is made possible by Restaurant Systems Pro. And you know, at Restaurant Unstoppable, we are huge fans of Restaurant Systems Pro, so much that we are partnering with Restaurant Systems Pro, and they are going live every other week, twice a month. They are going live in Restaurant Unstoppable Network. Fred Langley, the CEO of Restaurant Systems Pro, we will have access to him, and he will go through your P&L. You do not have to be a Restaurant Systems Pro client to take advantage of this. He will literally tear apart your P&L, and he will help you find the gaps so you can increase your profit by 5% or more. He is literally saving people's restaurants in Restaurant Unstoppable Network. If you want to take advantage of not just Restaurant Systems Pro, their budgeting, their costing, their inventory, their labor management, their training, their general ledger, all tied to your POS, this amount of data is insanely ridiculous. Beyond that, he's making himself available to coach you. This is all happening at restaurantunstoppable.com/live. We'll see you there.
So like, what are the big takeaways there in that book?
I think that when I work with clients to figure that out, and it's interesting, like a lot of the clients that I work with have been in business 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. So, my early assumption was everyone's got this worked out. They'll just write it on the page. And it's amazing that 99% of people spend days, weeks, sometimes months figuring these things out. And, in some cases, what was true when they opened is no longer true, right? They've just got older, they evolved, and so on and so forth. A break in partnership, that changes things. Like, there's a lot of reasons why, but to get recentered on this. And so that's like your anchor point. And then you go back to the beginning and said, are we hiring people that could truly breathe life into this, right? That could take it on and make it their own. And then all the way through, like looking at, I focus with clients on a 100-day induction program for staff. And in that 100 days, they're learning the 7 or 8 or 9 things that make your brand unique. And the 100 days is also the final stage of the interview. You're getting paid, you're on the team, but if you can't do those things, like, what's your threshold for keeping people on that, we've all run interviews before, but I've made a lot of mistakes in interviews, right? I've hired people that 2 weeks later, I'm like, who the hell hired this guy?
Right.
And they say, oh, you did, right? So it's like looking at the entire life cycle, right through to the end. I'm amazed that most bars and restaurants really don't do exit interviews with their staff. They don't do exit surveys with their staff. I'm like, how much institutional knowledge they have? Well, what if they lash out? So what? Disregard it. Like,
back to what your daughter was afraid of, fear.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just ask them. And, the one question I love in the exit interview said, hey, if this was your place and you had the power to make any change in the business, what would you change? And nobody says, upgrading the furniture or new playlists. It's always about the human element. If you only listened more, if you only, I read one the other day and they said, the disrespect of our time by never having the schedule out on time doesn't allow me to be a good mother. You know what I mean? I was like, wow. And the person that owned the business said, this will never happen again. One woman had the courage, but first they had the courage to ask.
Right.
Right.
There's so many different directions we could go, man, with what we just dropped on us. You kind of mentioned, I think you were a little ahead of the conference. Maybe it was during the pre-interview chat, where we're going. If it's so much about the human element of things, I think it's harder and harder today to feel valued, to feel seen. We literally don't need each other. We live in a world where the government and the marketplace and like we just like it's more cush than ever before. We're in a comfort crisis right now.
Yeah.
Do you believe it's harder to be seen today than ever before?
I believe that. Yeah, let me start with the fact that most owners and most leaders in our industry, I don't think have enough focus on making people feel seen and making them feel valued and important. Straight through to the staff, who a lot of the younger generation now grew up sending a 10-word text instead of having a face-to-face conversation. So I think there's a lot of factors at play. Having said that, I think that as a bar, restaurant, cafe owner right now, this has been no better opportunity, right? We have something that humans crave in general. They don't get it often, but when they do get it, that business gets rewarded tremendously, right? There's, in the little town of Annapolis that we're in right now, the best restaurant in town I almost never go to because they don't make me or my guests feel a certain way. We go to the third or fourth best restaurant, right? Best food, all of that, because of the way that we're made to feel there. And I've got to know the owners and the staff, and they really do care. And it's a massive difference, and they get rewarded with more than hundreds of millions of dollars of extra business a year than they otherwise would have.
Yeah. So as we like move into the future and technology continues to progress, and we can do more with less, AI, I think was a conversation that came up earlier today.
Yeah.
Is AI kind of replacing the need that we have for each other to be like, I don't know, like there's just so many things that like AI is going to replace in terms of like jobs, right? But like that job, that having that something that I'm good at, that I can contribute to an organization and be a part of something bigger, we're going to lose those opportunities, right? Or do you disagree with that?
I think I've read a lot. I'm fascinated with the age of automation and Henry Ford and the assembly line. Here's the truth. Robots for the most part make cars now. But there's more people working in the automotive industry in the U.S. now than there were at that time, right? Because now instead of 200-300 components to a car, there's 150 in a seat.
Right.
Different springs, different heaters, different sensors, and all that sort of thing. I think with AI, learning to use it to your benefit and getting through. I'll give you one example that. Most bar and restaurant owners that I know that I've worked with have an incredible story, right? They're just terrified they're not good writers. They're not comfortable speaking into a microphone, all of that sort of stuff. Well, AI is the biggest gift they're ever going to have. Talk into your notepad, have it come out, teach it your voice, have it, spruce it up a little bit and get it out to the market, right? I think that communication is king. Storytellers win in this industry. And so that's just a great example of not only, talking directly to your guests and your future guests, talking to your future employees, right? Talking to your community members about who you are and what you're doing and why you think it's important to be a hub in your community. So I think that's all important. Then you look at how you can utilize it for staff training, right? So we took, I was working on this last week. A client prepared, said, hey, here's our old manual. Basically, they wanted to modernize it. And I said, okay, let's run it through AI. And we sent a quick text out. He sent a quick text out to his staff and said, who are your 3 favorite voices in the market, whether they're influencers, comedians, whatever else. We looked at the collective list, picked a voice from there, told AI to talk in that voice, make it fun, make it interesting. It said, what else do you need to know? Tell me a story about this and a story about that. And then we used a AI bot to be the face of that video. I mean, their training material now is better than what I could have done for a public company when I used to create material for public companies with a team of 10 people. And we did it in an hour and a half.
It's weird. It's like I hear that is a huge asset to teams. And that what an individual can do today is more than a single individual could do or a small team could ever do in the past.
Right.
But are we eliminating the specialists?
I think to some degree, some specialists, but I think we're creating some new ones as well.
We don't know what that looks like yet until it plays out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm hopeful for that. I love that mindset. I think that's good. I think part of the argument with AI is that it removes a lot of the tactical technician work.
Right.
And it creates more work for the creatives. It creates more space for the freedom of creativity.
Right.
Right. And I hear that too, but don't the tactical people need purpose?
They do, but this is this transition from the age of automation, right? What did those folks do? They went into different jobs, in many cases, higher paying jobs, more pleasurable jobs for them rather than being on the line,
right?
All of that.
Yeah.
So, I'm already seeing like friends in certain industries, like, just it's wiping out certain segments of employment. You think about industries like accountancy, for example, right? Accountancy is just a series of pathways and rules and regulations.
That's the thing that AI is best at.
You can't tell me that any human is going to be able to outperform AI in a year's time.
Right.
And it'll just ask you all the questions, and it's connected live to the government database, constantly updating. No accountants plugged into the government database 24/7.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think only time will tell. We just have to see how it plays out. But at the same time, it's like, to your point, I think you mentioned this earlier, I think there's going to be more opportunity in the hospitality industry than ever before as people are being replaced in more corporate environments, like desk jobs are probably those types of jobs. Like any data-driven job is going to go away first.
Right.
And then the restaurant industry, the industry that's probably been the most up against it in terms of trying to find people to come work, right? Like, where are all these people going to go? They're going to go back to the most human industry out there. And I hope that this AI helps us become human again. Yeah. Because I think it's what we're learning is back to human. What we're learning in order to be happy, and like we've learned a lot about like what we put into our body in terms of like food. We're looking at food as fuel now more than ever before. But also we're starting to realize that the best thing that we can put into our body is food that is grown in the most natural way. Right. So like, I think we're going to see the farm industry improve. More and more people are going to put money into holistic, responsible farming because that's the best thing for our bodies. But on the human side, it's also just being seen, right? Like coming together, being like, we are so disconnected in the most connected world. And I think that as people learn more about what we need in terms of psychology to be happy, the only thing you can do is sit down in the same space with somebody.
Right.
Like that is the best thing for you, is to sit down and have a conversation with somebody. Yeah. As we learn, like what are you thinking as I'm saying this?
Well, as I mentioned, my youngest is now the fourth and final of my kids to come into the hospitality industry. And you may be surprised how many people have said to me, well, with all you know, why would you want your kids in this industry? Right? Like I get that from a lot of people. And I said, you tell me another industry that they're going to learn the things they're going to learn here.
Right.
Right. And I believe I became a millionaire because of all my years bartending. I just didn't have the money yet. Like I'd learned the things I needed to do to be wealthy. And the three things I hope most for my kids are the three things that I try to teach anyone that works in this industry. So the first is the first thing that you do and you learn in hospitality is to see another person and be seen by that person, to create instant rapport with another human being, right? My kids will tell you, I've never been in an elevator before, sat down beside someone on a plane where I'm not able to create instant rapport, right? It's a wonderful gift. I've had the opportunity to practice tens of thousands of times now, right? And it's a wonderful playing field to be able to do that on. And then the next level in that is to be able to please them, to make them smile. Right. So I say to my kids, like, try to do that with everyone. And it takes something different for every individual. You have to read them and watch their nonverbal cues. So the second thing that they're learning in these restaurants is to sell with dignity. Right. And for me, sales is being a good steward of the opportunity. Right. So if my daughters and my son get a chance to say, hey, I know this portfolio, I know all the options available in this business, I know the community pretty well, I can take care of you and take you on a journey that you couldn't be on your own, right? So that's what sales is. Never selling someone more than what they want or need, but opening up opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise know about. And then thirdly, the marketing piece of it is giving someone a reason to return, right? So that speaks to creating a future relationship, a promise to do something together in the future if you come back and see us again. And I ask anyone who says, how do you let your kids work in this industry? I say, you tell me another job where they can learn those three things at 14 or 16 or 20 and be given the opportunity to practice thousands of times.
Yeah. I mean, So I want to read back to make sure I got the 3 specific things. The first thing is to see another person and be seen. And what builds off of that is not just to see them, but to please them and to make them smile.
And to build instant rapport.
Yeah, and to build rapport. And then the second thing is to sell with dignity. And then the third thing is marketing.
Right.
Dive more into marketing.
Yeah. So this is the big, wonder for me. In every restaurant I go into, every bar I go into, 99% of them, you're there with your guest, your family, whoever, you're enjoying the experience. Check comes and it's over, right? It's just like, now I'm invisible, and you almost feel like they're just waiting for the table or getting through. The money and the time I see people spending trying to get people to come into their restaurant, I say, why don't you spend a little bit of time when they're right in front of you, asking them to come back, right? And so with all of my clients, we work on, let's look at the 4 core constituencies of people that come here. What events do you have coming up, or what changes in the business offer do you have coming that appeal to these people? And we could tie them to something in the future. But even if not, even if you don't have that ready, or you don't have many things happening right now, chivalry is a great reason. If someone genuinely walks you to the door, thanks you for coming, compliments you on the way out, says something to make you laugh, right? Like, that's enough for people to go, I'm going to choose where I'm going to spend my money and time, and I'm going to go back to restaurant 3 rather than number 1 place in town. Yeah.
Are you using it, or do you follow any technology that helps with this, that can maybe, I think the best thing you can do is 4 walls, right? 4 walls marketing. While you're physically there, that's the biggest impact you're going to have. But are there other tools that can help with this that we can leverage in terms of the digital world? Does this spill over beyond the 4 walls, or does this happen digitally too?
Yeah. I'll give you one example of what I think are one of the number 1 reasons why somebody decides on a place being their place, their local, their favorite. And that's at some point, somehow, they suddenly felt like an insider. That is so valuable to people, right? This is my place, and if we sit in this room together, the room we're sitting in now, there are at least 50 things in this room that have massive meaning to me. And I would be able to ask you 2 or 3 questions to figure out, and then connect you to 2 or 3 of those things, and then they'd have massive meaning to you. I leave the room, your friend comes in, and now you're the hero. You have the insider information, and you're making her the hero.
Right.
Right. So that's one. And to talk about technology, we were in New York on Friday, in New York City, Ali and I, and we had lunch with a client with Jack McGarry at Dead Rabbit. And man, you walk into one of his rooms, and there are 300 things up on the wall. So what we were working on was 2-minute, 4-minute, and 8-minute connection. So if 8 minutes quiet with a guest, you got time, a bartender or a server or a host or a doorman could walk out in the room and connect you to the story of Ireland, Jack's family, the struggles of this, that, bands, friends that have passed that are up on the wall. You have 2 minutes while you're on the bar, and they could do it from this place. So we're kind of creating a schematic and videos where he'd tell the story, and then we're using AI to kind of connect that room. And also, when no one's available, to use a lens that they can go around the room and hear him telling the story about why that artifact's so important, or what the meaning of this is.
Yeah, that's cool. So many little nuggets being dropped on us right now too. And we you brought it back to that first thing, seeing other people and using the physical space to create connections, right, and to make them feel like an insider. Right. In terms of selling with dignity too, I think generally speaking, selling is a dirty, people associate it with a dirty thing. You don't want to sell people. Mm-hmm. But when I think of selling, to me, and it's one of the reasons, you mentioned something earlier today like this, or I brought it back to the surface, is if you want to do epic things, you got to do epic shit. But also just this idea of focusing on doing what you really want to do. And for me, what I want to do is reconnect with people like you. Right. And reconnect with the products and services that I believe in, because people like you are referring them to me. Right. And going deeper into these things, these people I believe in. And when you believe in something, is it selling? Or is it serving? Hey, get this like, what do you like? Oh, well, we have this thing on the menu that like, you're going to love this if you like those things. Or, oh, you have this problem. Well, I have a solution and it's going to make your life so much easier.
Right.
When you believe in the thing that you're quote unquote selling, is it selling or is it persuading? Is it serving?
Yeah, I think you're right when you hit on that. For selling, that even the word sales to some people is a dirty word.
Like,
right?
you think of a car salesman, right? They're just trying to win, not make sure you win.
Right. And so this is where we start when we bring people in the industry. We talk to them about their relationship with the word sales, and for most people, it is that it's the car salesman. It's a pushy telemarketer that's calling during dinner. It's whoever in their life has inconvenienced them. And when you talk to somebody about that and how that made them feel, and I said, what do you think the purpose was of them doing it that way? And they said, so they win and I lose, right? But I said, think about this industry. I said, that can happen here too, right? You could, I hate the term upselling. It just means like we want to, if I'm in your restaurant, I'm looking at a wine list, I'm looking at $100 bottle of wine. You can see where my eyes are, and you move me over to a $300 bottle of wine. Like, no one wins there. I feel uncomfortable. I don't want a $300 bottle of wine with my dinner, right? So, but I said, imagine if these people love wine, they don't get out very often. And you have something that they want, and they're asking the right questions about it, and now you're leading them and you're sharing with them something that is very valuable to them that they wouldn't otherwise know about unless you told them.
Right.
And the non-monetary sales as well. Like, I really believe that every cocktail and every dish of food tastes better with a story, right? But you're giving them that. You're providing that to them on top, and now they're aware of something new. You're the steward of that experience,
right?
You're building layers onto the experience. To me, sales is, we have to realize we're retailers, right? We are selling something to somebody when they come into us. What they buy is really up to them. It's just being a great steward and guiding them towards good choices.
Yeah. I'm happy we went into this. I mean, those three things came up in our first conversation together. I think this was the playbook, the hospitality playbook. Was that where it came up? Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, that's right.
So, seeing another person and being seen, sell with dignity in marketing. And maybe I'm paying too much close attention to this, but seeing another person, but also being seen. Can you tap more into the idea of being seen? Why is that? Why did you make it a point to say being seen too? Well,
I think that you look at some of the great leaders in our industry from the past. Ritz-Carlton's a good example. They have a card in their wallet that everyone has to carry to work every day with their core values on it, their mission and everything. And it says, their opening statement is, "We are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen," right? We're equal, but we've chosen to be at service to them, right? So meaning we have to maintain our dignity, and we're not putting people up on a pedestal. We have just chosen this line of work because we love it. It gives us energy. It fulfills our purpose. And I think that hospitality becomes empty or false when it's all about the guest. Like, to me, it's about a relationship. Now, it's a lot more about them than us. That's what we signed up for. But my best hospitality interactions, and I was in bars for 20 years of my life, were when it was reciprocal, right? When I developed the instant rapport and then developed a relationship with that person over time and connected that person to the brand, to my colleagues, to my boss, to other people in the room, right? You can't do that if you're entirely subservient, right? You have to be seen as a person. You have to be seen as someone who's generous and giving, but there has to be some back and forth in order to develop that relationship.
100%. Yeah, man, great stuff. Getting back into that. Thank you. You mentioned something else earlier that really kind of resonated with me, and I want to go deeper into it. When back to the napkinomics, when people come to you and they're trying to figure out their values and figure out their identity, like how do you steer them? Like, what does that look like? We're kind of going down a whole different rabbit hole now. But like, what if I was a client of yours and I feel like you work with some big names in the industry. Is it safe to say that a lot of these people kind of have that identity by the time they come to you?
I think that they do kind of informally, which makes it tough to really develop your business and really scale. We all have a brand. We all have values that we're operating on. If they're not formalized, and let me make the distinction. You look at a company like Enron when it went under, their 4 values were, integrity, transparency, blah, 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 all bullshit. Right. It's bathroom art that you put something up. So, when I take values, for example, anyone that has more than 4 or 5, 6, if your staff can't remember them, they can't honor them. Right. So you want to start small, you want to build up, but I'll say to my clients, what gets you hired here? Like, what is it that you really value in somebody that comes on here? And you do that enough, ask them, you start to drill down, and you'll start to see, then on the flip side, what gets people fired here, right? So that's your anti-value, right? They're trampling on that value. And then we use 3 litmus tests for ensuring that it truly is a core value and not just an aspiration of the individual or of the business. First off, would you not hire someone who you thought was an excellent candidate because they didn't possess this value or aspire to it? Would you pass on that candidate?
Okay.
Secondly is, would you fire your top performer for repeatedly violating that core value? And then thirdly, would you take a serious financial hit to protect that value? If it doesn't tick all 3 of those boxes, it's an aspirational goal. It's not a core value.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm going to share my core values with you, and I'm going to get selfish here for some coaching on my core values to see where there's room. So they are, actually the first one is the newest one. We have freedom, or we are in pursuit of freedom. We have integrity. We are students. We are educators. We are collaborators. We are communicators. We have fun. So it's a lot of core values.
Yeah.
Right. Want me to go through those again?
Yeah, one more time.
We are in pursuit of freedom. We are students, now I'm going out of order. See, this isn't good. We are in pursuit of freedom. We have integrity. We are students. We are educators. We are collaborators. We are communicators. We have fun.
Okay.
So you can sell. For me, the reason why those are my core values, I took a personality assessment. When I talk about freedom, like, I've learned that the most important thing to me, my life, my biggest core value, according to these tests that I've taken, is that I love freedom of purpose, freedom of relationships. I want to be able to do what I want to do with who I want to do it. And I think that most people feel that way. Mm-hmm. I think we have to prioritize that. When I say that we have integrity, we do what we say we're going to do.
Yeah.
If you put it out into the universe, you better follow through with it. Right. We are students. We're always learning. We are educators. We are always teaching what we've learned. We're pulling people up with us as we are growing. We're bringing people with us. Mm-hmm. We're paying it forward. We are collaborators, because no matter how good we are at doing the thing we are good at, like, we can't do it alone. Right. If you want to go forward, you have to have people who are good where you're weak. You need collaborators. We are communicators, because once you find your people, you constantly have to say, are we going to the same place? Right. Where are we going? Is it the same place? Do we want the same? Are we communicating?
Yeah.
And then I think the last one is we have fun.
Right.
And the reason for that is, like, what's the point if you're not having a good time?
Yeah.
So they mean something to me, and there's a story there.
Yeah. So I'll feedback a couple of things about your values. So firstly, the more values that you have, they are true values, that you're going to live by these, and people will die by these. The more you're narrowing the pool, right? Like, if you had 50 values and someone had to fit into that, it'd be very hard to find an individual to work for you or with you. So that's first. Secondly is, it's attaching the meaning to the words is a difficult thing. So I'll give you an example outside of your values, and then I'll come back to yours. People often say, we're like a family here. We're family. And once I ran this round table and asked the staff there, they picked some of their all-star staff to be at this table and figure these things out together. And 3 of the 5 people, when they were describing what family meant to them, had tears in their eyes, because they said, if this was like my family, I wouldn't be here. It's painful in my family. It's awful. My father was abusive. My mom was apologetic for the life that we didn't have. My brother left home at a young age. And so for the owner, it was like, oh yeah, family's a good thing. My family's a good thing, but theirs isn't. So that association pushes people away. With yours, your association with fun is whatever it is to you. You might have someone says, oh, you want us to have fun. I like to get blind drunk and kick over your equipment at the end of the day and act like a rock star. Well, you're like, well, that's not fun to me.
Right.
So it's just making sure that the association is universal enough. And then it's a storytelling behind it when you explain Well, what does fun mean to you when you say that's part of your value?
Which is fun. I mean, I want to be able to enjoy the work I'm doing, right? If you're not getting joy out of the work you're doing, if you don't get excited to do the thing,
Yeah.
like I genuinely have fun meeting strangers and
Right.
learning about them.
Yeah.
You know, so like, do I think everybody would have fun doing that? No, but my mission is to inspire, empower, and transform the industry. Maybe the thing that you have fun doing, you know, this is why we collaborate. The thing that you have fun doing will help us get to where we're going, but it's your version of fun. But as long as we enjoy the thing we're doing, if you're not having fun here, then let me help you find the lane that will make you have fun doing what you enjoy. And the reality is like, it's not always fun. You have to do the hard thing too sometimes.
Right.
But that's so we can do the fun thing. Right.
When you look at core values, you know, there's a definite value to the owner of the business, to the business itself. But when that core value connects with the customer or with the guest, that's where it's really valuable. So in my restaurant group, for example, our first core value in slang was you gotta wanna. And then people say you gotta wanna what? You gotta wanna be here. You gotta wanna be at service of other people. You gotta wanna be a good teammate. You gotta wanna, you know, whatever it is. And my customers would say, man, I've never come in somewhere where people they all seem like they really want to be here. The number one question we were asked is, you know, does that person have equity here? You know, is that manager, is it one of the partners here? You know, people took it on like it was their own because they wanted to do that. And then how do you honor that value? Every single year on their anniversary of starting with the business, they had to re-up for another year by filling out a 2-page form that said, how are you going to be better in a year's time by staying here? And, you know, someone who's halfway up in the totem pole in our group, a B+ player, hasn't cracked the A group yet, is going to be an A+ player down the road. So I said, would you be happier going into work there where you're looked up to and so each of the values, if your customers or your guests can feel it, I think that's where it really starts to triangulate between the business, the ownership, and the guest.
Got it. So relative to the values I shared with you, you think I'm missing an element of the connectivity with the end user, the listener?
I would just test that it matters to the end listener. You know, is this something you're looking for? Because you just mentioned when you talked about having fun, you love meeting new people and doing all that. Well, for a lot of people, that'd be terrifying to do every day. Right. So like, you know, it's hard to kind of craft the language of a value on the fly, but you know, that element of what you do is very rare and you're really good at it.
Thank you.
And, you know, so that might be part of the repertoire. Rather than have fun, it's like, hey, this is something that's unique and special and human that we do. And we get better every interview. We get better every year that goes by. But you got to have people that see that as a real benefit to get to do that every day. I get to do that rather than in the beginning, maybe I have to do that.
Yeah. So when I was forming the core values, I was trying to really think like, what are the biggest lessons I've learned? And like, if I want to pay forward to my listeners, like if you want to grow and be successful, you know, it starts like you know, at the really core of it, I think is, you know, we have integrity. We do what we say we're going to. We just start back to how you started with your talking to your daughter, coaching your daughter. Like we were always fearful. Integrity, like if you want to do it, like just take action, go do it. That's integrity. It's all the things that like are kind of like internalized, like just do the damn thing, just start.
Yeah.
And then if you want to be the best, you're always learning.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like the 7 habits of highly effective people always sharpen their saw, right?
Yeah.
And it's not enough that you are constantly growing. Everything that you're learning and you're applying, you're recreating yourself and others. You're pulling others up with you.
Right.
And then back to the whole, like, you need to go further together. You got to collaborate, and you need systems in place to communicate.
Right.
All these different people that come together. So I think like at the core of what I'm trying to do, like, and what I'm trying to create is like those things, like you have to do what you say you do. You're always learning. You're always lifting people up. You're always going further together, and you're always communicating. Because if you don't communicate, like, so I think that I could probably narrow it down to 5 things for core values. But is that core value or is that a process?
Right. And is it, you know, put it through that test. Would you fire someone for not doing those things on a regular basis? Would you not hire someone who hasn't proven to you that they have been learning on a regular basis, and maybe they haven't had the opportunity or didn't think they had the opportunity?
What were those things? I think I wrote them down. Would you not hire somebody if they had, or would you not hire if they have or don't have the value? Would you fire?
So number one is, would you pass on a top candidate because they don't possess or aspire to
Got it.
a particular value? Number two is, would you terminate somebody, your top performer, who repeatedly tramples on that value?
Got it.
And then thirdly, would you take a serious financial hit to protect it?
Got it. Yeah. I think I have to do a workship on my values, man.
Yeah. And you know,
So you agree?
yeah. And in the restaurant environment, the bar and restaurant environment, you know, step one is articulating it, getting them down on paper. Step two is testing them against those filters. And then step three is bring them to life. It's not enough to have a poster on the wall or something on your website. I give you two ways that we work with clients to bring these things to life. Number one is, issuing those values on a card. So the owner, let's say, has a card, walks into her business, and the day bartender's on, it's pretty quiet, and they say, hey, here's this value card. Which of these resonates most with you? And she says, being brilliant at the basics. Like, this is a place where people take very seriously the groundwork to do all the advanced things that we do, but everyone really focuses here. And say, okay, great. Who's a person that really exemplifies that to you? And they'll tell you, and they say, tell me why. Why do you think that? Why do you think that's the person? And then they tell you a story, and they're reinforcing it in their own mind. Then you leave from there if that person's on the property, or if not, you make a note, and next time they're in, say, hey, you know what? Sarah, I was blown away that I was talking to David, and of all the people that work here, I asked him about a value and a person exemplifies that. He said this, and here's why he said that. And so suddenly it's the story building upon the story, and a person going, oh my God, like, I can't believe someone's recognized me for that. So that's one way. Another is at pre-shift, right? Have your value. So if you have 5 or 8, 1 per month, and then do that at pre-shift.
Yeah.
And say, hey, who in this circle that you're standing with right now exemplifies this value? And
yeah.
They talk about it. And I tell you, when you celebrate somebody in public, it has a 10x factor, right? They're like, wow, okay, that's cool. What you celebrate, you get more of.
Yeah, you kind of remind me with Hurt Schultz, who you brought up the Ritz-Carlton earlier today, and what they do with their standards of excellence. Every shift, they go over all their standards of excellence, and they find an example of somebody who exhibited that standard of excellence, and they go back. I think there's 26 standards or something like that. And once they cycle through every standard, they go back and they start from the scratch. But you do that with your values too,
right? Or
you do that with somebody living out the mission. So we kind of went through a cool exercise on, where you gave me some feedback on how to find the values, those litmus tests. What about mission? Do you have any thoughts on mission, and when it comes to like trying to find your mission or find the words to communicate your mission?
Yeah, the mission. Some of the stuff you can't do, by a joint assembly of your staff and everything else. Like, the mission of a lot of business is very personal. And in talking about where we're going, but how we got here and why we're here in the first place. And I'll give you an example. When I was written my business plan in London, moved to Sydney, and by design, I went out and found people who wanted to either were new at owning bars and restaurants, or who were looking to get into it like I was. And so there was 2 other guys that I met, and we'd meet up once a week, and we were talking about our mission. And I thought I was doing something wrong, because my mission or my why and why I was there was so different than theirs.
What was yours?
Well, I'll tell you what one of theirs was, and to compare it to mine. So this guy was like, he wanted to be recognized. He loved cocktails. He loved being seen. He loved building up staff and building these drinks. Wanted to win all the awards and everything else. Mine, I felt like a misfit my whole life. I was told by teachers, by people that loved me, try to protect me from myself, that you should submit to a life of construction. Nothing wrong with construction. I'm just not very handy.
Right.
Right. And so my mission was to shed that label. Right. And I wanted to build a stage where other people could come and find out who they were. Right. And what I found along the way is I'm still a misfit, and I kind of like it.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a bad thing. It is what it is. I was in the minority that didn't fit into the puzzle, but that's not a bad thing. That's where a lot of great art comes from. That's where a lot of great stories come from. So I said, I'm going to build this stage. And I used to say to people, if you've ever been told by a teacher, by your father, by an employer, that you're nobody, you're nothing, you're not going anywhere, and you want a chance to prove yourself, I've got a stage here where you can find out who you are and step in your potential.
Was that stage the restaurant?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. To this day, I like to cook as much as the next guy. I like cocktails, I like spirits, I like music, but that's not my passion.
Okay.
Right.
So you didn't feel like this was enough when you were sitting down with these 3 other guys, or these other guys? You said that was.
I just felt like I was doing something wrong. They're like, well, are you going to tell somebody that? And what kind of misfits do you think are going to show up? But I mean, we had, when I sold the group, we had 396 misfits that worked for me. I mean, some of the best people I've ever met in my life, and people showed up in droves. And you know what? Most of them didn't even look like how I thought they'd look. Right? Like, yeah, we had some folks before tattoos on necks were fashionable. We had some folks that had that and mohawks and everything else. But most people just looked like regular people that felt that they had been compromised and passed over. And I said, this is your place. This is your time. Come here.
What up, Unstoppables? This episode is made possible by Restaurant Systems Pro. If you are a listener of Restaurant Unstoppable, I know you've heard me mention Restaurant Systems Pro, but just in case you haven't heard of it yet, it is a all-in-one enterprise solution. All the most critical systems that will help you become profitable. I'm talking about costing. I'm talking about inventory management. I'm talking about budgeting. I'm talking about labor management. I'm talking about training. The list goes on, all under one roof, tied to your general ledger, and they have their own POS, and they integrate with nearly every major POS out there. Restaurant Systems Pro is an amazing tool, and this is the thing that gets me really excited. When you join Restaurant Unstoppable Network, you get access to the CEO of Restaurant Systems Pro, Fred Langley, twice a week for a P&L Power Hour. He literally will let you open up your P&L, share it on the screen, and he will help you close the gaps and increase your profitability. You do not have to be a Restaurant Systems Pro user to benefit from these live events. He doesn't care. We're just here to help you. Head over to restaurantunstoppable.com/RSP to get the full playlist of every Restaurant Systems Pro episode, a link to all the testimonials. And if we haven't sold you on Restaurant Systems Pro by then, I don't know what else to do. But if you really want to up your Restaurant Systems Pro experience, be sure to join Restaurant Unstoppable Network too. All right, guys, one more time, head over to restaurantunstoppable.com/RSP. Well, yeah, I think those people do really well in the hospitality field.
Right.
I think a lot of the people who come through the school system, your stereotypical school system, are people who are good employees. Right. Generally in terms of like the corporate setting, like they're good at doing something. But the hospitality industry, the skill set that you need to be good in hospitality, the social emotional intelligence of like listening and entertaining and like being personal, not necessarily the technician, but more like the, as I'm saying this, what are you hearing? Like what's going through your mind?
The industry is frowned upon by many, and it's ironic that people spend their time and money in our industry, but they think that the people that work there are stuck. My last year of full-time bartending in London, I made more than my father made as a banker.
Wow.
Right? Like, you can make a lot of money. You can meet some great people if you keep your head, right? And you don't get caught up in the lifestyle. And then when I got into leadership in this industry, like, I thought, man, what an opportunity to help develop other people. And first, to be that candle that lights another candle. Like, I'd hire people who I saw something in that maybe didn't even see that in themselves. Right? My therapist says that I'm trying to go back and rescue my 12-year-old self, right? And maybe I am, but I've had hundreds of people work with me and gave them more responsibility than they deserved, helped them, built them up. And, as I was helping to build their confidence, they were building my business.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of skipping over them and, trying to touch every customer or be on the floor. You can't do that when you have 8 restaurants.
No. Yeah. So we didn't really get into this the last time we spoke. You kind of alluded that for you, the restaurant industry wasn't the thing. Mm-hmm. Being an owner wasn't the thing. But you built this platform where you're able to bring together these misfits. You were living your mission. What wasn't there for you? What were you missing?
What I realized is that I was, what I loved was the build of people, of businesses, and I'm still this way today. Then I get very bored,
Yeah.
Right. I'm not a gardener, right? Just keeping what I have, like, I'd want to do the next thing. And I thought, well, is this just me being impatient and everything else? But I love the puzzle and the challenge. And that's what I love about coaching. Like, it's the best of all worlds. I get to work on the things that I love and help people in areas that I'm good at, and I don't have to do any of the other stuff.
Yeah.
And, in parallel with that, and I'm always careful to point out to people, is that as much as I had a handful of things worked out on one side, I was also living a very unhealthy lifestyle as a restaurateur. I was young and immature, and I was 300 pounds. I was drinking a lot of Red Bull. I was drinking red wine at night to go to sleep. Thought it was a badge of honor to work 100 hours a week. All these things that will put you in a grave, I was on the track for. So, I started young, and in that regard, I had a lot of great business mentors. I just didn't have great mentors on living a healthy life.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, when I got here today, I asked, is there anything you want to talk about? And one thing I want to start talking more about on the show is kind of like, you're a repeat guest on the show, so we've shared your story, and again, that was episode 1027. If you want to check out the full episode, but I know you have some opinions. You're pretty vocal about where we're going, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like one part, what's your perspective? What's your story? How'd you get here? Where are you today, and where are we going? So where are we going
as an industry?
Yeah, how do we not? I think we're guilty as an industry and as a society of being reactive. We're not very proactive. We're generally short-sighted. We do the thing we have to do right now to survive at our own detriment. We don't think about like where do we want to be? Like, what's the future we want? How do we reverse engineer that as a society?
Yeah, I think getting excited about the opportunity again of hospitality. We've talked about technology and how much that's changed. Instead of talking to each other, we text to each other. The pandemic, on one hand, allowed a lot of people to work from home, and that's a good thing for some and for many. But on the other hand, a lot of people are lonely. That forced interaction, going to the office, talking to the person that works across from you, being in the meeting, hanging out 10 minutes afterwards, going and grabbing lunch with somebody. And I think that just opens a bigger door up for our industry to really connect with people when they're there and hire people and show them a framework to do that, right? I realized, like, when I grew up, believe it or not, I was pretty shy. And I thought that some people are born, they're people, right?
Yeah.
It's a learned skill. And there's a framework to do it. There's a system to do it. And that's like, as I said, with my daughter, the youngest one's the shyest one. It's going to be so good for her to talk to a couple hundred people a day as a host on the door and make small talk and then get to meaningful things. But I think that's it. And if I could put it into a framework, 3 levels of human connection. We have level 1, NSW, news, sports, and weather. Hey, how you doing? How you doing? Nice weather. How's your team doing? All that sort of thing. Level 2 is where people, even strangers, can talk about things that are more meaningful, but it usually only happens when the opportunity presents itself. It's usually chance. Level 3 communication is where we're going to talk about things that are meaningful, that even a stranger can talk about. And a good acronym for it is FORD: family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. If you're talking about one of those 4 things to another human being, they've got something to say about it.
That's family, occupation?
Yep.
Recreation, dreams?
And dreams.
So those 3 things: news, sports, and weather, general.
Yep.
The second one was more meaningful, usually by chance, something that we stumble upon.
Yep.
And then the next 3 things, Ford, family, occupation, recreation, dreams.
Yeah. So family, that's obvious. Occupation is not necessarily just all about where do you work, but why do you work there? What do you love about the work that you do? What got you into that? What surprised you when you became a full-time professional in this area? Like, now we're talking about, where somebody spends 1/3 of their life. Like, if that's not meaningful to them, then I don't know what is. Recreation is, what do you like to do outside of here? Pickleball, I like Harley Davidsons, and then suddenly you're cycling and you find something that, oh man, my dad loves that too, or I enjoy doing that. And then dreams is like, what do you want to do next? Where do
Yeah.
you want to go? Who do you want to meet?
Do you have a dream for the industry? What do you think with the industry?
You know, to be honest, the whole industry seems like a dream to me. It really does. Like, this is where I'm meant to be. I'm very fortunate that I've enjoyed my time for the most part. I've had my problems, but for the most part, I've enjoyed my time, and I've made a lot of money at it. And I just got back from speaking in Dubai. It's my 55th country I've been to, and the 33rd that I've spoken from the stage.
Wow.
And I'm like, you know, where else would this happen to a guy from a small town in Canada of 2,000 people that hasn't graduated high school?
Yeah. I mean, the industry is, I'm right there with you, man. Like, I think that this industry literally has transformative power. And I think that it's weird because it's like, I think there is no industry as human as the hospitality industry. I think we think of like food and serving food. Food is literally what formed who we are today as a species. We're so connected to food relative to our evolution as a species. It was literally our ability to, hunt and gather as a group, to cook and to use chemistry and agriculture, science. Like, the scientific revolution came from food.
Right.
Like, we are what we are because of food and our relationship. And I think today when we think of our relationship with food, it's almost like an afterthought. It's like a convenience. It's like we've gotten so good at it that we don't even recognize it as our connection to it.
Right.
But I think that we're going to swing back into this intentional relationship with food. And I think that growing and serving food could really have transformative power on society going forward. Like, that's my dream, is that we awaken and we realize that, like, we can use this industry to literally make the world a better place.
Right.
Do you agree do you think I'm too much of a dreamer?
No, I think that what's interesting to me in today's marketplace and opportunity is how technology has changed everything in that regard. So, for example, when I was a kid working the bar at Hard Rock Cafe in Toronto, no guest standing on the other side of the bar had any access to find out where we bought things, why we bought from certain people, why we did certain things, how we prepared things. Now, I was in New York City on Friday night, and, there was two couples beside us, two men, two women. And I was over listening to their conversation, and they were in their I'd say mid to late 20s. They knew more about whiskey than most people that I know that work in the industry.
Wow.
These are just consumers. And I asked them, I said, hey guys, we started chatting, and I said, do any of you work in the industry? No, why? I'm like, wow. I said, where did you learn all this? They're talking about the bottles that were there, and they've tried this and they've done that, and they did a tasting here, and this goes well with this. And, if you haven't tried that, I'm like, how do you know all this? And they're like, it's online.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's amazing to me. Getting back to where people buy things from and why. It used to be easy to slap up a sign that says farm to table. It was bullshit. Well, now they can look up the farm that you say you're buying from.
Right.
And then why are you buying from that farm, right? So I think it's an interesting place where the consumer has so much access to information of their preferred field. And I think that's driving the standards of what we need to do in serving those guests. I
mean, it's interesting because I think if you were to talk about marketing, I think what we learn in terms of what consumers want, what does the value, give the consumer what the consumer wants. What does the consumer want today? Is it what does it? I think what we have created and what the purchasing, what the trends are, people want more for less.
Right.
You look at the brands that are, not going anywhere. Like, where is McDonald's going anywhere? Is Amazon going anywhere? Right. What does the consumer really want? And I think that I wonder, because if they did really want quality, then why is it getting harder and harder for independent restaurant operators to exist today? It's getting harder and harder for small business owners to do the right thing, i.e., pay their employees well, at least a livable wage, right? And to support their local economy. It's getting harder and harder to do those things. So is that really what the consumer wants?
Well, I think I have a different take on this, that when I look at...
I'd love a more positive take, so please share it with me.
Well, there's a whole concept of the race to the bottom, right? With some of the brands that you mentioned and the way they do business, and bigger is better and all that sort of thing, and cheaper. At some point, it's like...
So convenience is a big part of what the consumer wants. I want to tap a button and have it on my doorstep 24 hours later.
The flip side to the philosophy of give the consumer what they want is to do your art so well, and you don't have to appeal to everyone. Like, people will find you, right? I mentioned being in New York. I went to 3 businesses there, clients I work with. They're just doing their art, man. They're just doing their art at a level that is just next level, and people will find them for doing that. There's also a lot of businesses that are generalists, right? And then they're trying to appeal to people with a special, with a bigger plate than the place beside them, and just trying to appeal to everyone. The businesses in this industry that I admire really specialize, and it's like, the original guy that I work for and working at Hard Rock, Isaac Taggart, once said, he said, if we do our art, if we do what we do so friggin' well, he said 20% of people that come in here are going to be blown away and love it.
Yeah. I mean,
60% will appreciate it and 20% won't dig it at all. And he goes, man, I love those numbers.
I agree with you. And I think at the end of the day, all we want to do, I think if you look at like what makes humans, it's creativity. It's art. Like when you ask, what is creativity? I think 9 times out of 10, somebody will say like art,
Right.
like a painting or a sculpture. I think creativity is also problem solving.
Yeah.
Right. It's finding a solution. It's making something better than it was.
Mm-hmm.
It's finding areas for improvement. That's also creativity. And I worry sometimes that like, the world is getting more and more difficult for the artist, for the creator, the person who just wants to do the thing that they love. It's harder and harder for that person to be able to do it.
Why do you think it's harder?
Because I think what people want is more for less. They want convenience. And I think it's what's that like little ditty? It costs this much. Like you see it all the time on Instagram. It costs this much because it took me fucking hours. You know, like if you've seen that ditty. Yeah. Like, and it's harder and harder for the artist to make a living, the creator to make a living. If you're trying to do it truly well, that means sourcing from like local purveyors, right? Like if you're a restaurateur that puts value in scratch kitchen, right?
Yeah.
And you want to like source from local farms, and you want to pay the people that are helping you create this thing well to keep them long term, to create opportunity for them. Yeah. Like it's getting harder to do those things. At least that's the narrative I'm picking up from these independents that I'm talking to. They're worried.
So firstly, getting into the mindset of the consumer, I don't think that people want more for less in general. I think they want to pay less for a lesser product.
Yeah.
I think if people in general wanted more for less, the parking lot would be full of Toyota Tercels. People want what they want, and they want it to be good value for money. And in the absence of value for money, they want to pay you less.
So I guess the definition is like, how do you define something that's valuable?
Well, that's really what I've learned most in the last 10 years is that, valuable to whom, right? To a certain constituency of people. And that's why I'm saying if you do your art so friggin' well and find those people, they'll find other people to join your tribe and come in, and your business will flourish.
Yeah. I think that is one great byproduct of the internet today, is that your tribe is no longer the people that you can literally yell to and hear you. Like, it's not the people that are in your, like, you're within a mile from you. It's like literally your kind of freak is out there somewhere, and you can find each other.
Right.
But at the same time, that level of disconnect, like maybe you're connecting over the same subject, but like, is it the same? You can find the person that has the same interest of you, but connecting on the online, are you having the same impact by being in the same room together? Like, it's like a weird thing going on.
So interesting to analyze the language, right, of building a customer base or building your tribe.
Right.
There's a very different meaning to those two different subgroups, right? And if you're building a tribe, you guys own it together. You're in it. They were already doing what you were doing. You're just doing it out in public and giving them a place to congregate, a place to be the hero in the story, right? A place to bring other people in. And that's what I think a lot of bars and restaurants are missing, right? They water down their brand to the point of, they're worried about someone not liking it. You think about it. If you own a bar or restaurant, most people that are going to come in tonight are never going to come back again, right? And not because they dislike what you've got. There's just not enough to like, right? It doesn't resonate with them. And even the best bars and restaurants that I think are the best, I could bring someone there, I might bring you there, and you go in. This isn't my favorite. That's cool too. You're not part of this tribe. But if you really drill into the tribe aspect and what do we need to provide them to make this work and make it valuable, it's a totally different framework than building a customer base.
So, like, what is that framework? Do you have the framework? Is that one of the things you're working on?
That's part of the hospitality book and how to build that, because that's the product, right? That feeling that we have, the joint ownership of this thing, the accelerators in it, right? Like I was working with a client in the last week or two on, I said to them, not for everybody all the time, but I said, what do you do when you've got a tribe member that's in your place and you found out that it was their birthday and they're kind of quietly, what can you do what could you do for them or with them that they would tell a story about in 18 months time? And they're like, I don't know. And I said, let's think through it. They came up with 8 or 9 things within an hour, right? You've got to activate your tribe and give them a reason, give them a flag to hold, right? I'm surprised at how absent merchandise is in a lot of these businesses.
Yeah.
Right? I have 300, 400, 500 shirts from bars and restaurants. This is
literally like what am I wearing right now? I think,
yeah.
Oh yeah, I got this one last week.
And I said to you, tell me about your hat. Where's this place?
Bodega.
Charleston. You told me the story, right?
Yep.
Why? Kevin Plank doesn't need you to tell the story about Under Armour, or Phil Knight doesn't. You don't need a Nike logo on. If you're in the industry, carry someone's flag in the industry. If not your own, somebody else's. But that's tribal.
Yeah, I have a swag problem for sure.
Yeah.
Everywhere I go, my closet's getting pretty big.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you have opinions, and this is something that I want to share my platform with others to share political views. I think we need to start having political conversations. I think I'm a good person to have these conversations because I'm pretty middle of the road.
Right.
I like to hear both sides of things. So I think the elections now are getting more important than ever. We're more divided than ever. I think we need to find that middle ground. Like, what are the things we all want to see? Like, how there's got to be more that we agree on than we disagree on, and how do we focus on that, right? So a lot of things happening in the world today. I know you're pretty outspoken. You're not shy to back away on what you feel about what's happening in the current political scene. So like tariffs, I know you have opinions on that. Anything else you have opinions on that I should know about?
Well, this is obviously the craziest political time of anyone's life in what's going on at the moment. I think that. I think politics can definitely be a wrecking ball for a bar, restaurant, getting, the unspoken, don't talk about religion and politics and money, they say. But, I think we need to have certain conversations. Like right now, just for example, there's a lot of terms that get thrown around. They mean different things to different people. But this idea that, they might cut 300 million or 800 million from Medicaid and Medicare. Okay. Is that the right thing? Well, who would that impact and how would that work? And what would it cost on the back end? And when someone tells you that 30 million people would suddenly no longer have access to healthcare, well, you know what? They do have access. They just walk in an emergency room where it costs 4 times as much. Right. So these are the sorts of, conversations, I think, in getting below the rhetoric and the emotion and the anger that people have. And, I'm heartbroken that, like, I've only lived in the States for 16 years. I've lived in the same neighborhood for 15 years. Going back 8 years, I didn't know who was a Democrat or Republican. I just didn't know. I'm not into it. I'm Canadian. I lived overseas a bunch of years. Now it's very obvious. And those people don't talk to each other anymore. My neighbors don't speak anymore.
That's crazy.
It is.
Why is that the case?
It's, it's become that tribal and that emotional, and it's, I'm right, you're wrong. Like that's that mind frame has killed more people in this world than disease has, right? And I'm not only right, I'm not gonna be satisfied until you agree that I'm right and you now speak the same as me. That's where we've got to, rather than debating the logic of the idea or what are the other options. Yeah.
I know you have thoughts on tariffs, right? I think you made a post on that. I think I saw on social media.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Well, they're going to be part of our life, a bigger part of our life moving forward than they have in the past. I think the danger is that typically, prices go up. there's thresholds get crossed. When a pint of Guinness was $7.80 and now it's $10.10. Like breaking that 10, you have to take a $10 bill and then more. Tariffs are an interesting thing, especially the way they're being handled by this government, that they're going to go up and down. And putting yourself in a 18-year-old server or 26-year-old server or bartender and these wild swings and having those conversations, and then they go up and then they go down. I just think that we really need to lean in as leaders with the communication and how to handle these things, how to navigate through them, how to set up menus that have like asterisks that these things aren't tariff affected. Like, I think there's a lot to do there if we want to maintain our trust with our guests, because that's paramount.
Yeah. So what is the benefit of identifying these tariff protected things or not, the things that aren't affected? Is it saying, hey, like, help us keep the consistency in, I mean, I think here's what's going through my mind. Is it necessarily better that we are supporting foreign countries and their products and goods, or should we be better about not purchasing tariffed items anyway? Like, isn't that better for communities if we're supporting local? Like, isn't it weird that it's like more affordable for me to buy goods from Mexico than it is from my neighbor?
Yeah.
Like, it's weird. Like, it's very complicated, and I don't pretend to have all the answers. But I understand the challenges of tariffs for sure. Like, if you're a Mexican restaurant, like, fuck, like,
right,
limes, like tequila, like avocados, like your entire menu, is going to be way more expensive. But are we more privileged like, here's another thing about Mexican restaurants. Everybody wants fajitas. We're a society that's addicted to this one cut of meat.
Right.
Like, are our restaurant trends sustainable?
Yeah. Well, the original framework of the tariff, right, that we're putting this barrier up where, we're trying to, what's said now is they're trying to level the playing field, right? We've chosen, and in fact, the U.S. not only chosen, is led a global economy, right? And it's, for the most part, we could talk about the loss of manufacturing. We're still the number 2 manufacturer in the world in this country. Really? Right? Behind a country that has 6 times more people than us. Yeah. A country that sometimes allows unionization, higher wage, all that sort of stuff. Like, I don't know if anyone's begging for, I don't want my kids sewing your running shoes, right? That's just not, I want my daughter in the restaurant. I don't want her sewing running shoes. Right. But in a global marketplace, should anybody's kid be sewing like shoes? Like do we, as Americans, do we exploit other countries and like their labor so we can have our cheap shit? That's a whole nother discussion, and no, we shouldn't. Certainly shouldn't have. I feel like generally speaking, people are so short-sighted. They're like, oh shit, costs are gonna go up. But like this global marketplace is, if we want like a better world, if the world is literally shrinking and we can be on the other side of the planet in 24 hours or less, like, shouldn't we just be changing our habits as consumers generally? Like, is this gonna like expose some of the shit that we're just doing? And like, yeah, I don't have the answers, man. Yeah. I just think that generally the things that people get their feathers in a fluff about are like moot points, because there's a bigger picture. Right. Moving the labor and who's doing the work and the conditions around that aside, because there's some major issues there in all over the world, including this country. Moving that aside, looking at global trade, a good example that Americans really love, I love it. I love coffee. There's one state here that produces coffee of any note, and that's Hawaii, right? And that's like less than 1% of our consumption. So if we want to drink coffee, we have to be involved in the global trade. Right. Now, when you look at the trade deficit with Colombia, let's say, how could Colombia ever, with all the coffee they import, it's not realistic to think in a country where people make a fraction in a day of what we make, that we'd have an equal trade balance with them, right? It just doesn't make sense. And the products that we have are too expensive for that market to begin with. So yeah, we are going to have a trade imbalance there. There are, there's hundreds of products that we just don't produce in this country. And like I say, when it comes to manufacturing, we still do a lot of great manufacturing in this country. We've chosen to let things go, or some things have gone because of the economic labor generally, right? Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have the answers, man, but I do think that, like, generally speaking, it's short-sighted.
Yeah.
You know, and I would love to have more conversations like this, because I think it's all connected. And people will be like, why do you want to talk politics? You're a restaurant business podcast. Because where the fuck did revolution start?
Right.
200 years ago, 300 years ago, in restaurants.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that we need to, if we're going to change the world in the restaurant industry, you know, we need to think bigger picture.
Yeah.
You know, I think we're all in like little silos right now.
I think back to when I was a kid. My best friend's dad was Italian rock and roll singer. He came to Canada, or immigrated to Canada. And one day we get home from school and he's got 2 grocery bags and he puts it on the table. He's like, boys, I can't wait to show you what I've got. So it's taking all this stuff out, you know, fruit, sausage, loaf of bread, this and that, a can of something. He goes, look at this. You know, and I'm like, what are we looking at? I'm looking at this guy's groceries. And he goes, Sean, you know, this orange was likely picked in the last 30 hours in Florida. Someone went up on a ladder, picked it, put it in a basket, put it on a truck, and now it's ours. It's here. This sausage is from Italy. You know, it came over. You know, this is from here. And he goes, you go back 100 years and a king couldn't eat like this.
I know, it's crazy. And I think
Right.
that's part of the point, is like, we just live in this world right now. And like, if you are alive today, all you know is an unprecedented world.
Right.
And like, our point of reference relative to where we are is just, we are all so privileged. And I think that, I don't know, I just feel like when you really take a few steps back and you study history and you think about the things we're arguing about today, and it's just like, wow, like,
Yeah.
what is, like, is there a bigger picture we need to see? I don't have the answers, man,
Yeah.
but I do love this kind of conversation.
Well,
you know?
I think that, you know, there's always problems in the system, and I think that gets 95% of the attention. But like, looking at that angle of gratitude, like, man, aren't we like, this is the best time for humans to be alive?
Yeah.
Right? It really is. There's some wars going on, less war than at any other time,
Right.
less children dying there before, less hunger in the world, less everything. Is there a million things to fix it? Yeah, of course. But I think if we're focused on what's working, do more of that, and while simultaneously trying to chip away at the things that aren't, I just think there's a real lack of gratitude in general about how friggin' lucky we are.
Right. It is a really exciting time to be alive. When you think
Yeah.
about what's happening in the world right now, like what we're learning about just the human mind, what's potentially possible. I don't know if you're a religious person, but I think whether you are or you're not, what we're learning about just this idea of infinity.
Right.
You know, like, if that's true, and there's in quantum physics, and the quantum realm is real, and like parallel universes, and oh shit, by the way, aliens are also real now. Like, is it like, it's like I was raised Catholic, right? The more I became, you know, an adult, the more I started leaning to like the scientific world. I'm like, oh, like, I don't know if I'm religious anymore. But the more I lean into the scientific world, the more I'm like, oh shit, maybe I am religious.
Right.
Because there's more of like this idea of there being a creator could be a thing. You know, the more crazy shit that I learn, the more I realize crazy shit's possible.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's crazy. And I think it's just such an interesting time to be alive right now. But I think one of the coolest things is this idea of just the mind, the power of the mind, what the mind can do, and this idea of singularity consciousness, that we all have this thing that we share, consciousness. And not even humans, now they're thinking like plants are conscious. There's evidence to support that.
Right.
You know, and it's just like, if we all just start thinking consciously, like, and like, really what matters, like, what are the universal things that matter? Like, all the little stuff that we hate about each other doesn't really, at the end of the day, like the differences, you know,
Yeah.
whether you're left or right, don't really matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I think, why don't we talk about that stuff?
Yeah. And there's no better place to connect to all of that and explore it than, I think, than in a bar or restaurant.
Exactly.
My experience on the weekend in New York City, a city that I've been to 75 or 80 times, I love it. It's one of my favorite places in the world. But, you know, of the tens and tens of millions of people there, the only ones I connected with were in bars and restaurants.
Yeah.
Right? You don't stop someone on the street and get into a conversation with them, or saddle up to them on a subway in a city like New York. It's less likely to have a meaningful conversation. But, you know, I talked to those people standing beside me. I talked to the staff. I talked to the, you know, and then they introduced us to somebody who liked what we liked. And I just think that's the opportunity for us. If we focus on that and make that a lead element of our business model, I think you win.
Yeah. You know, and I think one thing that all, you know, establishments could be better about is focusing on what's happening locally.
Right.
There's like this, we have this access to like this global network of information, what's happening on a global or a national scale, but like what's happening in your backyard.
Right.
Like do we get together and talk about local politics? Like how many people actually go out and vote for the local politics? The numbers are like bad. It's like, like in the single digits of percentage of people who show up for like local politics.
Right.
But that's where the change happens. Like why aren't more restaurants saying like, let's come together and talk about these people who are running in our community, like get back to that local tavern pub, like what's going on here locally, like restaurants were like political like center points for the longest time.
You know, that's a great point. So one of the things that we did going back to Sydney was that, you know, most of my places didn't open for lunch, and there I have these beautiful venues, these boardrooms, if you like, not being utilized during the day. And so we started to make a point, talking to our guests about it, putting up on the website that we'd be willing to loan you our space during the day. So for political groups, for philanthropic groups, for whatever else. And I mean, you know, if they wanted something from us, they could bring things in. But if they wanted something, we charge them whatever we charge them. And we take care of them when they're there and all of that. But I mean, getting to meet those people and our staff meeting those folks and then connecting them to other guests who came in. And it's when you position your bar or restaurant as the hub of the community. And if you're not sharing that space, you know, then I think you're missing out.
Yeah. Is there anything that did not come out of today's conversation? Now's the time to get it out.
You know, one thing that's near and dear to my heart, that what I just flew to Dubai to talk about there, you know, is this aspect of mental health in our industry. And I guess the message that I'd love to share, and it's exciting for me because it's kind of new, and I'm doing work with clients to create an environment, an opportunity for people to work in a business that is purposely focused on having a better space for your mental health, your creative mind, and that sort of thing. You know, in the past, I think it's been seen by many in the industry to be an expensive thing to do. Right. And what I'm proving now with a bunch of clients that I'm working with, it's actually a cost benefit to the business because you're attracting a certain type of person into your business. You have less turnover, less gossip, less issues, that sort of thing. So, you know, for example, working with clients to figure out in the business, like where the industry, where your particular business impedes on their mental health. And an example of that is, you know, I don't care who you are, when the shit hits the fan and the bar's 5 deep and you've got some intoxicated customers, the music's louder, the lighting's darker, it's a tough environment to work in. And we, with a couple clients I'm working with right now, they put a light in all the bars that if you're walking the floor and this light's on, like a traffic light, it stays on green. If it's on yellow, someone on that team is feeling, you know, like there's a lot of pressure here. If it's on red, it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, someone needs to be ejected, but it means, hey, we need help here.
Right.
We're struggling. And, you know, what I'm doing with 3 clients at the moment, kind of testing this theory is, you know, most bars and restaurants have between 14 and 18 peak hours a week where they're pumping. And it's this concept of just extra hands. It's an unskilled or untrained person in any specific position, but they're a capable, and they don't have to be a young person.
Utility player.
Yeah, utility player to come in and to shift into that area where the pressure is. You know, at one point, the host stand's getting trampled. Then the restaurants all got seated. You might need that person there. The dish pit's overflowing. The bartenders need someone to clean an ice well. And we've been testing. Let's round it up to 20 peak hours. And just for a rough figure, $20 an hour, that's $400 a week for that business. And I mean, the reception of that has been unbelievable. To have, you know, anyone who works at a bar or restaurant hasn't had a week go by where you don't think it'd be nice to have another person here right now for just half an hour to dig me out. So that's one way that we're working. Another example is my bars, we went dry. I just got to a point where I saw a few messy things and I thought, we're in the business of selling alcohol, not drinking it. Right. And I don't know about you. I have a couple of drinks and I start making some bad decisions.
Yeah.
Right. About what I say, what I eat, all of that. And so we took that out. You know, in my case, we lost about 15% of our front of house staff. Droves of people came down that wanted to work in that environment. We didn't have to worry about your colleague being drunk, just making bad decisions, being on his phone more, whatever it might be. So we're working with these businesses to find out and say, how do we make this a attractive place for people who want to work in the industry but don't want a lot of the downside that comes with the stress, the alcohol, the drugs, and all of that.
Yeah. If we want to learn more about these things that you're sharing with us, or maybe we want to hire you, or maybe be a part of the community that you are a leader in, what's the best way to connect?
So I'm pretty active on both Instagram and Facebook. We have a private page, or a page that you can just join, or group. Sorry, we have a Facebook group that you can join. So if you go to the Instagram is Finter, Finter, Sean, Sean, all one word. You'll find me there, and just Sean Finter on Facebook, and my team will connect you. What I often say is that everything that I've talked about today, or most everything, we have a system for. We have case studies, we have tools for. We give all that away. I get paid for implementation as a coach. Content and education,
that's out there,
we do for free.
So we'll have links to that in the show notes. If you guys in the player or whatever, that be iTunes, Spotify, to scroll down, we'll have the link to your Instagram and to your Facebook page there. I would love to continue to follow up every couple of years, man. I want to kind of end where we started. So we echoed the first success quote that you shared with us 2 years ago, and I think, again, before you have a breakthrough, you must have a break with. And I think that kind of resonated with me, this idea of getting very intentional and shedding the things that don't make you happy and becoming more self-aware about what you're good at. One thing I have been better at since speaking with you last is being really, for me, it's about being intentional with the people I want to promote.
Right.
And growing relationships with like the greatest hits, which is why I'm back here, man.
Right.
You're on that list of greatest hits.
Oh, thank you.
I'd love to continue to share projects that you're working on, to share perspectives that you have, and to promote people like you doing good work, man. And you've helped me kind of reconnect. That's really who I am. That's what I want to be. I want to be a promoter. I want to be a connector. And I want to find these leaders like you in the industry and get more opportunity to share your thoughts and your ideas. So thank you for helping me kind of understand and reconnect with that. It feels like I'm moving in the right direction. I know it has a lot to do with surrounding myself with people like you.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, and I always love talking with you and spending time with you. That idea that this self-analysis and figuring out like what's going to take us closer to our happiness, take us closer to our purpose. The hardest part of that for me was, it no longer is, but it was for a while, in looking at things that made me happy in the past, that did serve me in the past, that no longer serve me. And that's the break with, right? And that's what's hard for your mind to go, here's a quick example of a coach that I had years ago. And it was his theory that, there's 8 or 9 people in your life that have this tremendous amount of influence on you. And you might think, oh yeah, my mom, my dad, but he said, no, I'm talking about the people that show up most in your text messages and most in your email, the people that you're actually in contact with most often. And I wrote down there were 9 people and that were on this list. Now he said to me, put a plus or a minus beside each of those people. The plus is that person taking you towards your future, your bigger self? Or are they holding you back from that? My list was 3 pluses, 3 minuses, and 3 neutrals. And he said, well, here's the thing, there's no neutrals, right? So those 3 neutrals became 3 minuses. Hadn't done anything wrong, and I hadn't done anything wrong. We were just no longer meant to be together.
Yeah.
Right? They weren't on the same journey that I was on. And your life, you can only have a certain amount of people in your life. And so when you purposely organize your life and the people around you in that way, for me, I can tell you, going from struggling in high school to the life I've lived, I just feel so grateful every day. But there's a formula for it. I don't mean to sound like The Secret or something, but there's a formula to living a life that makes you happy and that's filled with purpose.
I love it, man. Who are some pluses I should be aware of? Give me some, like, this is my North Star. This is who I get on the show. Like, who do you respect and admire? Restaurateurs, bar owners out there doing amazing work that have a story, that have a perspective, that have knowledge that needs to be shared.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that I look up to. So a few in particular, and I'll kind of tie in the character of the person and them doing their art. I'd have to say the top of that list would be Julio Cabrera in Miami at Cafe La Trova.
Yep.
seeing what he does and how he does it, and the purpose he brings to his community every day. Who's somebody closer to home here? I really like, actually not closer to home, right across the country. I don't know if I've mentioned Ced Moses to you before.
I've had him on the show.
Oh, you have?
Twice
Okay.
now, actually.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
good.
And he's somebody that is on that list. A lot of the people I would love to get back on the show are people you've introduced me to.
Okay.
Or I think there are people who are in your circle.
Yeah.
Jack McGarry
Yeah.
is a past guest in the show. Ced Moses is one of those
Yeah.
people. There are people in the Carolinas that I would love to get back on the show that I know are in your network. I could name more names. But there's too many.
In the Carolinas that you got to get on the show if you haven't already. Have you had Gary Crunkleton on?
Yep.
I love that guy.
Yeah.
That guy is hospitality to me. Just such a wonderful guy. I think you've had John Sealbinder.
Yep.
So I love John too. And the work he did with the hurricane victims.
No.
I mean, he lived in his truck for months. He's helped countless people. That'd be a great story in itself.
I just rode through the Carolinas trying to get back north to New Hampshire, but you know what? I'm headed to Florida next winter, and I plan on taking my time heading down there. So I'll have to reconnect with those guys, get them back on the show.
Okay.
And I just can't say thank you enough, man, for taking the time.
Yeah,
I know 2 hours is a lot to ask in your busy life.
Yeah.
To come back and to pick up where we left off. I can't do what I do without people like you being generous with your time, knowledge, and perspective. And this is where I say thank you. And there is no questioning. You are unstoppable.
Thank you, man. I love being on.
Cheers.